Hi, it's Gadget UK here again, back for part 3 of Cather's A3000 repair. So from this video moving forward, we've decided to shrink down videos a little bit and release more of them. But yeah, anyway, part 4 will follow pretty soon after part 3. And at the back end of part 3, we were trying to investigate the chip RAM fault. I was at the point where I was trying to understand which bank was the bank that was problematic here, you know, because there's two 1 megabyte banks. Right, tested with that whole bank there removed. And we got to 1023. I think that whole bank is good, and then it's here dead block starts. So that's the next block, I think, which I think is this. Right, so I'll talk a little bit about what I've done here. I've just checked all of the control signals on the 245s and the 74F646s that sit in between the two banks of RAM there, actually. In particular, I'm paying attention to this. You see number 1 there, bit 1 on the upper word. So you've got two 16-bit words here. You've got lower byte, upper byte, lower byte, upper byte. So this starts here at D16, yeah, and you've got like D31 over here. So that's D16. And I've done the usual connectivity tests. I've swapped some of the RAM here because the RAM I've had is faulty. That was my initial problem, that my RAM was faulty, but some of the original RAM was faulty. But my RAM was causing it to not boot, so that was an added complication there. Anyway, I can work out what RAM's good, what RAM's bad afterwards, but for the moment, this is booting with this RAM, and we get exactly the same errors here. So that first bit is pin 1 on here. Now, if I scope it, it looks a bit weird, actually. And when I say scope it, this side here, we've got this sort of weird logic level thing again still. And actually it seems to be working with the weird logic level thing. So you're getting, you know, the DRD side, this is the DRD side, communicating with the Agnes and various other things. And we seem to have different logic levels there, which is, anyway, it's a bit strange, but that's what the bouncing logic level thing is. But obviously it goes from there then to up here, I think pin 18 on the
F245.
Or does it come out on 18? I can't remember now. No, it goes in on 18, so I'll show you. Pin 1 that RAM chip. Weird logic levels. But as I say, I think that's different things on the bus at different times. It's weird though, isn't it? Because we're getting very different logic levels there. Anyway, I'm not going to pay too much attention to that just now, although I should do. And if I now look at pin 18 on its 245 that buffers that, that's where it goes in, so it's making it to the chip. And then if I look at pin 2 on the 245, this is where it comes out. Right, look at the logic level there. Right, let me compare to the pin next to pin 3. So this is another data bit. And just swapping between, that's pin 2. That's pin 3. Yeah, they look different, I think. Let me just hit auto, let's see if we can get a cleaner view on that. Yeah, it's peaking around 4.3, 4.4 volts. But you see again, there are some shifts in logic level. Look at pin 3. See, look how different that looks. I'll check pin 4. Bear in mind these are the data bits here, whilst they look really, really weird, and I'm not sure why. I'm going up the chip here. These all look the same, but that first one, pin 2, doesn't. So I actually think it's not passing a bit or something on that side. So I think that 245 needs to come off. That's the next thing I'm going to do, is remove that 245. And it's this one. This is the one which has been probing. You know, the weird signal is pin 2 here. Its input came from pin 18, which comes from pin 1. And we're looking at that data bit, aren't we? D16, I think it is. Because D0 to 15, I think, are on these pairs here. And then the upper ones are here. We do know it's this data bit here, according to the schematics. So anyway, let me get that off. I'm just going to use some hot air. We'll socket it up. I've got a replacement, and we'll just see if that solves that data bit. I suspect it may do, and then we may get stuck with the upper word of the lower byte. If that's the case, I don't know. I'm going to need to reevaluate what the next issue might be, and have a think. I use the solder sucker there just to remove the solder, and then I use some hot air to free up from the underside. So it's still a bit warm. You can see the IPA insta evaporating there. Right, so it's looking pretty clean there, I think. I'm just going to get a socket on, and we'll see if that fixes that first data bit. So I've made sure the socket is nice and straight. No more. 2 meg. Oh yes, into the 2nd meg, no errors. So just testing with the original Kickstart ROMs. This is the first time I've ever seen this screen. So this was unique to the Amiga 3000. So you've got Kickstart 1.3 and obviously floppy option there. Kickstart 2 floppy option. It's quite cool. Yeah, I've never seen that before. Now, bear in mind, the reason I've probably never seen that before is that perhaps shouldn't be coming up as default. It might be detecting a mouse button being pressed or something like that, or maybe that comes up every single time. I don't know. If you've got no, auto boot stuff there, a hard drive or a disk in the drive. I'm just going to stick a floppy in and see if this will boot from floppy. I'll stick June in there, I think. Yeah, with either of those options here, it says insert super kickstart disk into drive DF0. So without that disk, I can't even boot the disk, which is really annoying. Yeah, I might see if I can find, I might have some 3.1 ROMs or something for this, I don't know, somewhere. Or I've got some Amiga 4000 ones, but that's not going to work, is it? It perhaps would do to get this to boot without the SCSI side of things. Yeah, I need to think about that. I might need to go away and write a super kickstart disk onto floppy. Anyway, I'm not going to focus on that too much at this stage. What we know is, from diagram perspective, everything checks out. The RAM is now good. It boots with kickstart, which is great news. You don't get a weird colour or anything like that. But I tested the audio output using diagram here. No audio at all. So yeah, we do need to start to remove some of the stuff around here. So yeah, so you can see the holes in my pants here. Yeah, you can see it also just got some vinegar in this, soaked it for about half an hour actually, flushed it out with IPA and then tried to turn it. It was pretty jammed. Got some deoxit in there, so it freed up, more deoxit and more deoxit, flushed it out, and yeah, you'll see it looks nice and clean on the inside, but it actually works. If I hold this up, so I've got right round up to almost 60 something picofarad. If I go back the other way, I think that's the right way. Hang on, 53. Let's just go a bit further the other way. Yeah, it's one of these ones where it wraps around, so I think it does anyway. So you can go past the point where you start if you're not careful. 34C. So it does work. I've adjusted it, a little bit, measured it, a little bit, measured it, and it's incrementing exactly correctly. So the corrosion has not affected that. And I think the reason being is it's not a metallic plate on the inside. Obviously, you've got metallic contacts here that are probably connected to the plates, but it's some sort of dielectric material that the acid, the battery alkaline, doesn't seem to affect. So yeah, that can go back on. I will clean it a few more times, and obviously we'll calibrate using the scope there just to see the effect that has on the 32.768 kHz signal. But anyway, right now I'm going to get that on a brand new crystal and the original 100k resistor. Right, so I took the 3 caps off around here, going to replace those, but I'm now going to have just a bit of a clean up here. I'll scrub around with some vinegar, get right in and around these components, fiberglass pen, and do the same as we go along here. I think, swap some of these things out as well. I mean, it looks a bit greeny, we've lost the solder mask, but you know what, this area is a lot less affected. The audio is working, by the way. We were missing a channel. I thought we were missing both channels, but I'm not really sure now. But yeah, we were missing a channel, and I just soldered a wire from here to, and I can see the trace. It's on the top side here. It's one that was broken, and I should have fixed it on the top side, and I forgot before I fit Paul. So I just put a wire on the underside for that. That's not an issue. So yeah, I think if I had a lot more time, I would remove every single one of these and do the same thing we did up here. But I don't think it's as essential, to be honest, because the majority of the extensive corrosion, all the things that were broken around where the battery was here. Yeah, the audio thing here, this channel, that wouldn't be broken if it wasn't for the trace that was right here, that was, kind of like it's anything that's in direct sight of the battery, because, it goes under things and it gets blocked by various things, so, inevitably it sort of stops after a certain radius, and then you just get a tiny layer of it that manages to get onto the surface of everything further afield. But yeah, you just lose the solder mask. The traces seem to be okay. And if you haven't worked out, I am getting a bit lazy, because you know what, I've spent literally 3 solid weeks on this, and when I talk about solid weeks, I'm talking about like last weekend I worked all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then it's like, my job is in between that as well. but when I get time to work on this, it's every spare minute of 3 weeks. This is why we're behind with videos again. Yeah, it's incredible how many hours I've spent on this. But anyway, you'll be able to see, it will look an awful lot cleaner. Now I'm able to get access to a lot of the things around here, clean up the flakes off solder mask paint, get some vinegar on it, a couple of cycles of vinegar and stuff cleaned, you know, pretty thoroughly around here. I will block the odd via where I can see corrosion on the other side. In other words, it's gone into the via, it's corroded the via. Those will get blocked, and then it should be alright. The chances of one of these tracers going, you know, open circuit or something at some point is going to be slim to none once it's been cleaned and stuff. Yeah, you can see it's not too bad. It's just, you know, nice gold sort of colour here. It's just the paint's worn off more than anything. The vias around here are not bad. There's just like 2 vias that need fixing. So clean in with a bit of vinegar and then clean and rinse with IPA. I'm quite surprised, to be honest, because I thought there were going to be lots of issues around this area. It kind of makes me feel a bit more positive about the scan doubler, that it might not be as badly damaged around here as I'm expecting either. I think it might just be a bit of clean-up work. But if you want to do a really thorough job, remove all of this stuff here. And if you're anything like me, you want a quick fix to an area where the components look alright, the component legs are all cleaned up, they look alright even on the underside, but there are some vias here. Yeah, just you know, straighten the pins on the underside, which is what I did first. You know, heat, and just use my pointy tool here to bend them out so they're straight, and then heat from the top side here, and just use my fine nose pliers here, grip the pin as you heat and just pull out, just lift them up. You can then inspect on the underside, clean them all up and stuff, but most importantly I can now get access to the 2 vias that are under here. So all back together here, I'll give you a close look at this area in a minute. So yeah, plugged 3 vias under there, another via, 4 vias in total I think. Cleaned all around that area, got rid of all of the corrosion and stuff off the surface. We're just back to copper, but I'll probably put some clear nail polish around that area and then replace these 3 caps. I've got Nichicon and 2 Panasonics there. So even though there's more cleaning up needs doing to the left hand side of that, around the op amp, and they take the op amp off, I think, we have sound. All 4 channels. And filter is working. Play the test module. Yes, that's working. I'm not sure if there is still some component around there needs some work, or a via or something, but I mean the filters are working. You hear a click there. I'm just hearing the odd little click, and I don't know, perhaps not quite as loud as it should be. I think the next thing I might do is get the ROMs back in. Now bear in mind I couldn't boot from those because I need some sort of floppy in order to, you know, boot from, I don't know, it's got a weird kickstart, hasn't it? What I'm thinking is I'll get the 2091 with a SCSI card in. No, it's got SCSI. In fact, I could use the onboard SCSI. I could take the one off the A590, the loose A590 I've got. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just try and boot from the onboard SCSI, I think. Well, the good news is it is booting from the onboard SCSI, but it needs Kickstart version 2 or greater. This is the pain in the you-know-what. Because I don't have any Amiga 3000 ROMs. I've got Diagram, obviously, and it's original ROMs. It's not going to boot a Kickstart 2 hard disk like this. Super annoying. Yeah, so pain in the backside trying to work out how to use this. Let's just try floppy. And it's going to ask you, super kickstart disk in DF0. So I'm going to go and research that, find a disk image, write it to this disk, connect the floppy drive up, try and boot from that. Just see if we can get Workbench to boot. Well, I say Workbench, it's not Workbench I want. I just want to boot the kickstart to give me the sticky disk in so that I can then stick another disk in, if you see what I'm saying. Right, so I managed to boot using the Kickstart 1.4. I've got that super disk. I've tried 2 different ones. They don't boot. They don't work. I don't get it. It must be a version thing or something. It just keeps saying insert super Kickstart disk and it doesn't work. I'll just show you how I did that. If I just power cycle that, leave that disc in. Now you'd expect a game disc to just boot with all other versions of Kickstart, apart from on the 1000, and you can see you get this menu. Now I've tried both options here with the Super Kickstart disc, which I've written to here. Doesn't do anything. Same with the previous one that I tried. I think the one that's on there now is version 3 or something, but the other one was a later one, 2.04, and that wouldn't work either. So if we choose up here, just click at the top left, you get a secret hidden beta. It's gone past the splash screen, but it comes up saying Kickstart 1.4. Looks like Kickstart 2.04, where you get the purple background, you know, that kind of splash screen. But anyway, that game's loading. The sound here is doing that twangy thing that, funnily enough, Cather's A3000 was doing in the original repair series for that. Yeah, and the volume, as I say, is still a bit quiet, so there is still an audio issue. I think the bias is missing, you know, the VREF. I'm just trying to look where it is. Yeah, there's a 2-point-something volt VREF, 2.5 volts roughly. So I'm going to check that part of the circuit out. But you can hear it going, yeah, so the filters aren't quite right and stuff on that. It doesn't sound quite right. But anyway, games are working from floppy. So yeah, the main stability of the system is pretty solid now. Anyway, report back in a minute. The two resistors here, 1.2k, opposite each other, and the top point on this one goes to ground. The bottom point on this one goes to like a VCC rail, audio VCC, which was about 4.7 volts. The centre of the two resistors, this side and this side, should join together and go to the third from the right here and the third from the left there. They were not joined together, that's all it was, so I just put a wire from that point there to that point there on the underside. If I just measure the third from the top right on the op amp, 2.37 volts, there we go. So we've got our VREF, it's roughly 50% of the 5 volts rail there. It was a bit under, as I say, it was like 4.7. In fact, I could show you that as well if I measure the bottom side of this resistor here. 4.72. Yeah, so you've got, you know, a potential divider, 1K2 and a 1K2 between 4.7 volts and 0 volts, and you get, because they're the same size resistor, you get a 50% reduction in voltage there through that potential divider. So that's what, you know, provides the VREF. So yeah, very pleased. The one thing I'm not sure about is where that trace was broken. I spent ages looking at the photos of the board that Chucky, well, not the photos, layout of the board that Chucky's publicised, trying to work out how those two resistors are joined, and I couldn't work it out. I just got lost trying to follow where the trace goes, because it probably goes through a couple of wires or something. My guess is it's probably a trace underneath this IC that was borked. Yeah, so I just ultrasonicked that whole corner of the board there. I was able to fit that in the ultrasonic, so the audio sections are a really thorough clean, including the connectors, and it looks so much better. But obviously there's some exposed copper, that's all that's wrong with that. I've just set the time date after fixing the real-time clock area yesterday. You know what, it just works. I'm amazed I haven't had to do any tinkering with that, and after cleaning out that little yellow trim cap there, it works, as you can see. But yeah, the real-time clock has survived that corrosion. That's ridiculous. The only thing I did do, obviously, is replace the 174 there, and I need to go away and order one for that, because at the moment it's got an LS one, and I think it should be HC or something like that. So yeah, I will order that. There's going to be a few parts I need to order. The F86 needs replacing as well, because it's got short legs. But everything is checking out okay. All of the RAM checks out okay. Sound now works. Let's now test it on here. Sounds perfect to me. Filter on or filter off. Sweet. Let's just put a high frequency sine wave filter on and off. Just for good measure, I'll test the RAM out on here as well. We'll do all. Yeah, there we go, one full pass. One thing of note, I went through all the RAM chips here, including a few of mine that I thought were faulty, they weren't. But yeah, 2 of his RAMs were faulty, so I've had to swap 2 out there. So I mean, that won't have been helping matters, but you know, there were a number of things, at the point where I just couldn't get this to boot at all. We had bad connection on 2 of the pins here, 2 of these RAM chips were faulty. We had a problem with this F 245 here on data bit 0, the first data bit, and there was a wire that shouldn't have been there, I think on the F86, joining something somewhere crazy. So there were a number of things going on, and this is the problem when you've got this level of corrosion. You can very easily lose track of what you're doing as you're going around fixing things. You've got to be really thorough, meticulous, and slow, and double, quadruple. You got to check everything. Do you know what I mean? Check everything a number of times before you commit to soldering a chip on, including, you know, making sure all the traces are good all around that whole area, and that you've not mistakenly connected something where you shouldn't have done to try and fix a connection. So a number of issues caused me stress there, and obviously all self-inflicted really, just because it was taking so long that I started to cut the occasional corner, or I would stop at a point where I thought, right, I got to fix that trace, and then I'd go away. Following day, forgotten all about them, didn't make a note. That was a good example of why one of the audio channels was missing. There's a trace that comes along here, and it sort of comes upwards at 90 degrees, and that trace is just balked, and I forgot to fix that trace before I fitted the socket. I presumed, perhaps in my mind, I thought I'll fix that later, and then forgot all about it. So this is why I had no audio on one channel to start with. So I just had a good scrub around with the fiberglass pen here on these connectors. I'll get some deoxit into those later as well, clean them up a bit further. I may even just ultrasonic this area at another time as well, just to make sure. But you can see I'm using the EV blog ruler here as a bit of scaffolding to support the ultraviolet light over that area there. I'm just perfecting this area now. All of this stuff here is solid. The system is absolutely rock solid. I may as well start to secure any things that need securing really. So once you've got a system booting like this, you can test other things. So now we can test the mouse. Right mouse button is not working. Let's just change, I've tested that as a joystick, let's just change that to analog, and let's just plug the mouse into the second port. I probably should have chosen yeah, mouse actually. Analog is like an analog joystick. Right, there we go, plugged into the other port. Up, down, left, right. Yeah, so that seems to be working. I'm just not sure why the right mouse button on the first port's not working. Now, my recollection is it's handled by CIA, but it might not be. I could be wrong. I always get confused when it comes to these buttons here. So I'm going to go have a look at the schematics, see where the right mouse button goes. Yeah, trying to make sense of this mouse issue. I'm not sure what's going on down here. You can see there's a big blob of solder there over those grounds. And that doesn't matter because they're all joined together, but I'm going to clean that off. And then there's some particles of solder on the traces here. There's some solder here. So I don't know, something's been going on here. Right now though, I'm having a hard time trying to make connectivity between either of the ports here and the Paula. Now I thought the pot X and pot Y, two connections on each of these, should go straight to Paula, and I'm not seeing anything anywhere, not a single connection. But the weird thing with that is the analog works on the mouse. Yeah, both buttons work on the right port, only the left button works on the you know, the first port. So I don't know. Anyway, I'll clean this up and just inspect around there. There is a wee bit of corrosion here as well, and you can see it just like fuzzy. Right, let's do the Hockham's razor check first, the simplest stuff. Just checking the connections from the actual ports here, along with fine traces to the EMI components. So we'll just do, start with that one down there. Yeah, just making sure each one joins from the pin to pin here. Because those traces are pretty fine, it could be some corrosion. But anyway, that port looks alright. And then we'll check the EMI things next. Because maybe one of them's blown open. And I obviously soldered the bodgy solder things there. That looks nice and clean now. Yeah, so there's no problems with the actual ports themselves. Let's now just check these EMI things. It should go across like that. Thought we'd found one there for a minute. It's not going to be an easy one, this, is it? What I'm confused about is why there's no connection from either of these ports here to Paula on any of the pot X and pot Y pins. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, so still trying to make sense of this, and actually I've got the joystick or the mouse plugged into the other port. Yeah, if we just count along here. 32. So 32, that's high. Yeah, there's nothing plugged in, so I'm thinking that's probably good. and we've got a pin that's not used, and then we've got a floating connection here, mouse not doing anything, and then this is the final of the pot X, pot Y. Now the right button on that port makes that toggle, but the very fact that the connection there is floating, I think that is the issue. You know, I think this is not receiving a connection. So yeah, I did suspect one of the pot X, pot Ys were not right round here. It just took me ages to work out how on earth the buttons are actually processed on this. I always thought it was the CIAs. I'm getting confused with the C64 fire button, I think. Yeah, the CIAs don't do it. 35. So I'll flip the board over, try and work out where the traces bore, 'cause it's one of the long traces that runs down, you know, a whole bus of them where they were super corroded, and I'll bypass that with a wire. Yeah, so I fitted a wire on the underside there. I'll show you that later. It's probably going to need securing with a bit of hot melt glue. I actually chose to run it right across the length of the board, pretty much straight from the resistor that you know, comes from the port, goes to Paula, and that was why I was not measuring a beep, you know, a continuity test between the port and Paula. But there was a break there on one of those connections, and if we hit the right mouse button now, that works fine. And I felt it was just worth reminding myself about the way that the controller inputs work there. It always confuses me. It doesn't matter how many times I look at these schematics and I go, ah, that's how it works. A week later, I've forgotten all about it. I don't know why that is. I have a blind spot for these Amigas. On the left-hand side, you've got a 157. And the inputs to that chip are driven on the left-hand side. As you can see, you've got underscore, active low, that means MC1. And then you've got M1V, M1H, M0V, M0H. So those are like horizontal and vertical, yeah, but they drive the buttons as well as the X and Y for the mouse, I think. The outputs on the right side there, you know, you've got two for each of those 1, 2, 3, 4 channels there. You know, you've got 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B. And those connections, if you follow them to the right hand side, they go obviously to the forward, backwards, left, right on the ports there. And this is where I always get super confused. I mean, if you look at the fire buttons to the right side, you can, on each of the ports there, fire 0 I think and fire 1, those actually go to the CIAs, but the directions, you know, so when you press up, back, left, right, those go to the 157 there, yeah, and you're like, well, what picks them up? But then if you look at the pot connections, so on the first port there we got pot 1Y and pot 1X, those go to the port, and there's 2 of those on each port. Those go off to the right side there, and that's where those go to Paula. Yeah, and what's confusing about this A3000 diagram is if you look at the arrows to the left there, they look like they're coming out of Denise, and actually the inputs and outputs, I think Denise actually is the thing that's responsible for reading the controller ports, you know, the up, down, left, right, etc. And the buttons as well, as far as I understand. And then the pot X and pot Y connections, I think, are generated out of Paula. I could be wrong. What is interesting though is we had the directions, you know, I was able to move the mouse, wasn't I? But what we didn't have was the buttons, and that kind of makes sense to me now, thinking out loud, because if you've got one of those, you know, the pulsed signals there, because I think that's what it is, you know, a sequence of pulses or something that come out on the pot X and pot Y, and if you've got one of them missing, it's not going to clock the data through, maybe for the buttons, and but you know, the other, because the other axis is there, he's able to do the, you know, X, Y of the mouse position. Nevertheless, it does get quite confusing with control problems on these. It's the serialization of that data read by Denise, and obviously on later machines by Lisa. At this point in the video, the cable that Kath has provided, it broke. There'll be a separate video on that. I've just wrapped that up into a video with an A4000 one as well. Thanks to Chris Cathers for providing me with that Amiga kit adapter there. He allowed me to keep that, which is just incredible because I've now got, you know, one of each there. I think the only thing I don't have is something for the 1000, but we'll deal with that in a later video. And a huge thanks for the dip leg straightener as well, shown in the previous video there. That has been so useful. Yeah, so I do hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel, please see the Ko-fi and Patreon links down below. Please like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video.